Every single night. She sat at the far end of the table, the same seat, the same plate that was handed to her last after him, after his mother, after his father. She ate whatever was left, the cold rice, the scraped pot, the piece of chicken that nobody else had wanted, the food that had been sitting there since they all finished, getting cold, getting hard, getting smaller with every portion served to everyone else first. And she said nothing. She cleaned the plate quietly, she washed the dishes, she went to bed. Every night. Now here is what makes this story so much more than just a story about a woman eating leftovers. The woman eating those leftovers was not a poor woman. She had not married into poverty because she had no options. She had not stayed because she had nowhere else to go. She had not accepted this treatment because she thought she deserved it. She had run away from her family to be with this man. She had stood in a church and said yes while her father stood in the doorway watching, his heart breaking, begging her to come home. She had chosen him. And this man, the man who handed her cold leftovers every night while his parents sat beside him eating properly, this man had planned every single piece of it. From the first time he saw her. From the first calculated smile at the school gate. From the first fake coincidence he arranged so she would need his help. From the first whispered words of love that he had rehearsed, not felt. He had planned all of it, every moment, every gesture, every word. Because this man grew up poor, genuinely, painfully, embarrassingly poor. The kind of poor where the roof leaks when it rains and you put buckets on the floor and go back to sleep. The kind of poor where school fees arrive like a monthly crisis. The kind of poor where his parents sat him down when he was barely a teenager and gave him an instruction that no child should ever receive. Find a rich girl, they said, marry her before she knows who you really are, get the money, get the life, that is the plan. And he listened. And he became very, very good at it. He studied rich girls the way a predator studies its target. He noticed which cars they arrived in at school. He noticed which girls had the newest phones and the cleanest uniforms and the confidence of someone who has never had to count coins. He noticed everything. And then he saw her. She was richer than all of them, and she was kind. And she was the daughter of a man who had built one of the biggest real estate companies in the city, generational wealth, properties across the region, a family that had been building for 3 generations. And this boy looked at her and thought, that is my target. What followed was years of manipulation so careful and so patient that she never saw it coming. Years of performed love, manufactured moments, calculated affection. Years of her telling her parents that he was a good man. Years of her father knowing the truth and not being believed. And then the wedding she ran away from home to have. And then the night her father's prediction came true, the night her new husband said the words she had never imagined hearing, and she understood, for the first time, exactly who she had married. And then the leftovers began. Every night. Every single night. Until the night her real father came. And what happened when he walked through that door, what he did, what he said, what he offered is not what you are expecting. It is not a rescue. It is not just justice. It is something so much more specific and so much more satisfying than either of those things that you are going to want to watch this story to the very last word. This story is about a girl who loved the wrong person, about a man who treated love like a business strategy, about a father who knew the truth before anyone believed him, and about what happens when the people who chose cruelty find themselves on the other side of it. Stay here, this story is going to keep you until the very last second. Before we begin, if you believe that what you do in secret always finds its way to the surface, hit that like button right now. One tap, do it now. Subscribe to Fair Folktales and ring that notification bell. Every week we are here with stories that stay with you. Stories about real choices and real consequences and the kind of endings that feel like justice served cold. And comment below, tell us, have you ever loved someone who turned out to be completely different from who they said they were? Tell us your story. We read every single comment. Now, let us go back to where it all started. Let us go back to a poor house, 2 parents with a plan, and a boy who was about to spend years of his life becoming the worst version of himself. Her name was Adiz Akafer. And her life from the very beginning was the kind of life that is built on a foundation so solid you do not even notice it is there. You just stand on it, you walk on it, you take for granted that the ground beneath you will hold. Her grandfather, Chief Emmanuel Okafor, had started with nothing in the 1960s. A plot of land on the outskirts of Enugu that nobody else wanted because the access road was bad and the flooding risk was considered too high. He had bought it for almost nothing and spent the next decade developing it slowly, carefully, building small structures and renting them, reinvesting every naira back into the next structure. By the time Adi's father, Dr. Chidi Okafor, was a young man in the 1980s, the family portfolio had grown into something significant. Not yet generational wealth in the full sense, but the beginning of it: properties across Enugu State, a development company, a reputation that opened doors. Dr. Chidi Okafor had studied architecture in London, not because the family needed to show off education, because he genuinely loved buildings. He came back to Nigeria with ideas about construction that his father had never considered and an understanding of design that transformed the family business. Okafor Properties and Development. He renamed it. He rebranded it. He took his father's portfolio of modest residential rentals and turned it into a company that built luxury office complexes, premium residential estates, and commercial developments that set the standard for what was possible in Enugu. By the time Adiz was born, the family was building properties that cost more to construct than most people in the city would earn in 100 lifetimes. Dr. Chidi Okafor was not an arrogant man. This was the surprising thing about him. He had all the reasons to be arrogant: the success, the name, the generational achievement, and he was none of that. He was a quiet man who read architecture journals in the evening and asked his daughter every day what she had learned. He had a habit of arriving at his construction sites in simple clothes and walking the site himself before the foreman even knew he was there, because he needed to see the work with his own eyes. His wife, Mrs. Ngozi Okafor, was similarly grounded. She had been a teacher before Adiz was born and had voluntarily continued teaching after because she said the classroom was where she understood what the world needed. She was warm, precise, and possessed of a specific quality that Adiz inherited. She could read a person's character within minutes of meeting them. Both parents adored Adiz in the way that parents adore a child without spoiling them, the combination of genuine devotion and deliberate expectation. She went to a good school because education mattered in the Okafor household, not because they wanted to display wealth. She had nice things because the family could afford them, but she was not raised to measure people by what they had. She was raised to measure people by who they were. This, as it turned out, was both the best thing her parents ever gave her and the reason she could not see what was coming. Because she measured people by who they said they were. And she had not yet learned that what people say and what people are can be two completely different things. Adiz arrived at the school on the first day of senior secondary in her father's driver-driven Toyota Prado. She was not trying to make a statement. This was simply how she had always arrived at school. Her school bag was a quality leather one that her mother had bought on a trip to Abuja. Her uniform was freshly pressed. She walked in the way people walk when they have never had a reason to be self-conscious. Not with arrogance, just with ease, the ease of someone who has never felt the ground shift beneath them. She had friends immediately. She was warm and genuine and funny in the specific way of people who are secure enough not to need to perform. She was good at mathematics, loved biology, and had strong opinions about music that she expressed with the directness of her mother. She was, in every visible way, completely unaware that across the school compound, a boy was watching her. His name was Chukwuemeka Nwasu, Chukwu to the people who knew him. And the people who knew him, his parents, his few friends, the neighbors in the compound where he grew up, would have described him as smart and hardworking if they were being generous. Which they were, because they did not see what Chukwu was actually like underneath the effort. He had grown up in a poor compound in the older part of the city. The house was shared between 3 families. His father, Mr. Nwasu, worked at a government office in a junior position that paid poorly and irregularly, and required the specific daily humiliation of watching men who had started the same time as him get promoted while he did not. Mr. Nwasu had theories about why this was, and none of the theories were about his own limitations. His mother, Mrs. Comfort Nwasu, sold household goods, detergents, sponges, small kitchen items from a small table at the front of their compound. It was a modest operation that kept a basic income flowing but nothing more. What the Nwasu household did not have in material wealth, it had in ambition of a particular kind. Not the productive kind, the resentful kind, The kind that looks at people who have more and calculates how to get what they have rather than how to build something of its own. Mr. and Mrs. Nwasu were the specific type of parents who had given up on their own generation's prospects and had transferred all their strategies onto their son. They had begun having conversations with Chukwu about wealth and marriage from the time he was 12 years old. Not about love, not about finding a good person, about finding a wealthy person. "You are going to the good school," his father told him one evening, the electric fan turning slowly in the corner of the small living room. "We are making sacrifices for this. Do not waste it on poor choices. The school has children from good families. You study them, you find out who has what, and you position yourself." His mother had been more specific. "A woman carries her father's wealth into a marriage if the husband is clever," she said. "The daughter of a wealthy man is not just a wife, she is a door. You need to know how to open the right doors." Chukwu had listened to these conversations the way you listen to instructions before an important task, attentively, with notes being taken internally. He had a good mind. This was the tragedy of him, that genuinely good mental equipment was being applied to genuinely bad purposes. He was observant, strategic, patient. In another life with different parents and different instructions, these qualities might have built something worth having. Instead, they built a predator. He arrived at the senior secondary school on the same first day as Adiz. He had pushed hard and been accepted based on his results, which were strong. He did not arrive in a Toyota Prado. He arrived on a commercial bus, changed in the school bathroom into his freshly ironed uniform, and made sure he was positioned near the front gate when the morning rush happened. He watched. He cataloged. He noted which vehicles dropped off which students. He noted who had the newest equipment, the cleanest uniforms, the most confident posture. He created in his head a ranking. Adiz was at the top within the first week. Not just because of the Prado, because of everything around her. The way other students deferred to her without realizing they were doing it. The way her clothes were quietly better quality. The way she was generous with things, lending pens, sharing snacks, laughing easily without looking over her shoulder, in the specific way of someone who has never had to guard their resources. Her family name, when he learned it, confirmed everything. Akafir Properties? He had seen the hoarding on 2 luxury developments being built in the good part of the city. He had walked past them with his father, and his father had said, "That family has money from the ground up. Their grandfather started with land and nobody can take land away." He went home that evening and told his mother. His mother smiled. "That is your focus," she said. "That girl, everything else is secondary." The plan began. Chukwu did not rush it. He understood with a patience that was chilling in a teenager that rushing would destroy everything. He spent the first term simply becoming visible, not to Adiz specifically, to everyone around her. He was helpful in class. He had good answers when teachers asked questions. He was the person who helped carry things, who arrived early, who stayed late. He built a reputation as a reliable, decent person. This was the foundation, the character the world saw. In the second term, he began engineering proximity to Adiz. He studied her patterns, what time she arrived, where she ate lunch, which route she walked between buildings, which subjects she struggled with. The mathematics? She was good at it, but there were specific concepts in further mathematics that she found difficult. He knew this because he sat 2 rows behind her and had been watching her expression whenever the teacher went to the board. He waited for the right moment. It arrived on a Thursday. The class was dismissed and students were packing up. Adiz was looking at her further mathematics textbook with the expression of someone who has read the same page 4 times and is still not sure what it means. He walked past her desk and stopped. "That chapter is difficult," he said, casually, not with too much attention, not with any obvious agenda. She looked up. "You understand it?" "Mostly," he said. "There is one approach that makes the whole thing easier. Do you want me to show you?" She looked at him for a moment. She had a very good ability to read people. This was the thing he was gambling on, that she would read him as genuinely helpful and nothing more. She had not yet developed the ability to see through patience. "Sure," she said. He explained the concept clearly. He had spent 3 evenings making sure he could explain it in a way that was natural and useful rather than performative. She understood it. "That actually helped," she said, with the genuine surprise of someone who has just had something click. "Thank you." "It is nothing," he said, and went back to packing his bag. He did not push further, he did not try to extend the interaction, he walked away. This was the strategy: plant the seed, step back, let it grow. The seeds multiplied over the following months, each one small, each one carefully timed. The day he happened to have an umbrella when she had forgotten hers and the rain came down without warning. The day he appeared in the library with a book she needed and offered to share it. The day she dropped her folder near the stairs and he was the first to pick everything up. Every coincidence was manufactured, every helpful moment was calculated, every warm smile was deployed at a strategic time. And Adiz, who measured people by who they said they were and what they did, began to see a person who said good things and did helpful things. She began to like him. By the end of the first year they were friends, real friends in her mind, a friendship she valued. In his mind, phase 1 was complete. Phase 2 was the emotional deepening. If physical proximity was phase 1, phase 2 was getting inside her thinking, becoming the person she talked to about real things, the confidant, the person who understood. He was brilliant at this because he was a genuinely good listener when there was a reason to listen. He had trained himself to remember every detail of what she told him, her opinions, her worries, her family stories, her small preferences, and to reflect them back at strategic moments in ways that made her feel profoundly seen. "You remember that?" she said once, surprised that he had referenced something she had mentioned months earlier. "I remember everything you tell me," he said. Which was true, every word she had ever said to him was filed and cataloged and available for use. She took this as evidence of genuine care. It was evidence of a very good memory in the service of very bad intentions. By the time they finished secondary school, she was in love with him. She had fallen slowly and completely, the way people fall when they trust the process of falling because the person they are falling toward has given them no visible reason not to trust. Her mother had asked about him once, careful and quiet. "He is a good person," Adiz had said. "He is different from what you think." Her mother had not pressed, but she had looked at her daughter with the eyes of a woman who had been reading people for 4 decades, and she had thought something she did not say. Her father had said nothing at all. But Dr. Chidi Akafur had been watching, quietly, from a distance, the way a man watches a shadow on a wall and waits to see what is casting it. He did not like what he was watching. But his daughter was not asking for his opinion. Not yet. University did not change the plan, it extended it. They both got into the same university in Enugu, Adiz because the family home was there and she wanted to stay close, Chukwu because he had specifically applied to the same institution after learning her choice. He told her it was coincidence. She was happy about the coincidence. University was where the relationship became official. By their second year, Chukwu had positioned himself as her boyfriend with the same patience and calculation that had gotten him to this point. There was no single dramatic declaration of love. He was too strategic for that. It happened gradually, naturally, in the way things happen when one person has been carefully steering them to happen while the other person believes they are simply unfolding. He was a business administration student. He was good at it. His understanding of financial systems, of how money moved between structures, of how assets were held and transferred, this knowledge was not accidental. He had chosen the degree for its utility to his long-term plan. He studied the Akafur family business in his 3rd year as a research project, under the cover of a general case study on successful Nigerian real estate companies. Dr. Chidi Akafur had given an interview to a business journal that Chukwu read 14 times and annotated in red pen. He understood more about how the Akafur property portfolio was structured than most people outside the company did. He had also, by this point, developed a relationship with Adiz that had real depth in it, not on his side but on hers. She was deeply invested. She had introduced him to her university friends, spoken about him to her cousins, told her mother over the phone that she thought he was the person she would marry. Her mother had gone quiet on the phone. "What does your father think?" her mother had asked eventually. "He has not met him properly," Adiz had said. "He should," her mother had said. The meeting that followed during a university holiday at the Akafur family home was the beginning of the real conflict. Dr. Chidi Akafur sat across from Chukwu Nwasu in the living room of his home and performed a kind of reading that Chukwu had never encountered before. Not hostile, not aggressive, just quiet and complete. He asked Chukwu about his family, about his parents, about his ambitions, about his plans. Chukwu answered everything correctly. He had prepared for this meeting the way he prepared for examinations. He had answers for every possible question. He had stories ready. He had positioned himself as a young man of modest background but genuine drive, someone who had not had advantages but was building something of his own, someone who valued Adiz for who she was. He was convincing. He had been practicing this character for years. Dr. Chidi Akafor listened to all of it. He nodded at the right moments. He said at the end of the visit that it had been good to meet him. After Chukwu left, Adiz stayed in the living room with her parents. Her father looked at her for a long moment. "That young man," he said slowly, "has never looked at you with love in his eyes." Adiz frowned. "Papa. He looks at you the way a person looks at something they want to acquire," her father said, "not the way a person looks at someone they love. You do not know him." "I know his type," her father said, quietly, without anger, with the specific sadness of a man who has spent decades building something valuable and understands what attracts the wrong people to it. "I have met men like this in business many times, men who see an asset and begin calculating how to get close to it." Adiz stood up. "He is not like that, you are being unfair." "I hope I am wrong," her father said. He was not wrong. But Adiz left the room. And the distance between father and daughter that had not existed before that conversation began from that evening. The blackmail started in their final year of university. Not dramatic blackmail, not threats or ultimatums delivered loudly. Chukwu was too careful for that. It started as conversations. Late-night conversations, his voice quiet and slightly sad, telling Adiz that he had been approached by a girl, a friend of a friend, who had made it clear she was interested in him, that he did not have feelings for this girl, that he wanted to be with Adiz, but that he could not wait forever, that if they were going to build a future together, they needed to move forward. He needed to know she was serious. "My parents are asking me about settling down," he said. "They want to know if this is real, if you are not ready." "I am ready," she said immediately. "Then we should marry," he said. "My father." "Your father does not love me," he said, quietly, almost sadly. "He has never given me a chance. How long are we going to let his opinion control our lives?" She looked at him. "If you loved me," he said, "really loved me, you would know that I am not what he thinks I am, and you would prove it." This was the trap closing. He had spent years making her love him. Now he was using that love as the lever. She resisted for months. She tried again and again to rebuild the relationship between her father and Chukwu. She arranged dinners that ended in tension. She had conversations with her father that circled the same points without resolution. Her father, for all his gentleness, would not change his position. "I cannot give my blessing to this," he said, one evening, final and clear. "Then I will do it without your blessing," Adiz said. Her father looked at her for a long moment. "Adiz," he said very quietly, "that young man will show you who he is. I pray it happens before it costs you everything." She left the room. She called Chukwu. "I want to get married," she said, "soon." "You spoke to your father." "He will not change his mind. We do not need him to." There was a pause on his end. Then, "How soon? How soon can you arrange it?" He had the church contact within the week. A small church on the edge of the city with a young pastor who had no particular attachment to the Akafor family. The date was set for the following month. Adiz packed a bag quietly over several nights, piece by piece, so that nothing looked like preparation. On the morning of the wedding, she left a note on her bedroom table. Her mother found the note first. Her mother called her father. Dr. Chidi Akafor arrived at the church in his car with his driver. He had left his wife at home because she was too distressed and he did not want her to see what might happen. He walked into the church. He walked down the aisle. He stopped beside his daughter who was standing at the altar and he said quietly, "Adiz, come home." She looked at him. "Papa," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "I love him." "I know you do," her father said. "That is why I am here." "I am not leaving," she said. "Doctor." Chidi Akafor looked at Chukwu Nwasu standing at the altar in a rented suit. Chukwu met his gaze. The look that passed between them was the look between a man who has been calculating and a man who has spent a lifetime reading calculations. "If she marries you today," Dr. Chitty said to Chukwu still quietly, "she receives nothing from me, not one property, not one naira, nothing." He was looking at Chukwu when he said it. He was watching Chukwu's face. And what he saw, the almost invisible flicker of recalculation, the microsecond of reassessment, confirmed everything he had known for years. "Papa, please." "That is my final word," Dr. Chitty said to his daughter. He looked at her face, his eyes were full. "I love you, I will always love you, but I cannot be part of this." He turned and walked back down the aisle. He did not look back. Adiz was crying. Chukwu took her hand. "Are you sure?" he said, his voice was gentle, careful. She looked at the door where her father had just walked out. "Yes," she said through tears, "yes, I am sure." The ceremony continued. What Dr. Chitty Okafor did not know, what he could not have known, was that outside in his car waiting, he stayed for 3 hours before his driver finally took him home. He sat in the car and looked at the church door and felt the specific grief of a parent who loves their child enough to tell the truth and has been told clearly that the truth is not what is wanted. He went home. He told his wife what had happened. She cried. He held her. That night, in the quiet of their bedroom, he said something that his wife would remember for years. "She will come back," he said, "and when she does, I will be here." The wedding night was the night the mask came off. They were in the small house that Chukwu had rented, a 2-bedroom place in a modest neighborhood, far from the kind of environment Adiz had grown up in. She had known it would be different. She had prepared herself for that. She was not marrying for money, she was marrying for love. She got to the small house and looked around. The walls needed painting, the furniture was basic, the kitchen had one small gas burner and a pot. She was quiet about it, she had made her choice. Then Chukwu's parents arrived. Mr. and Mrs. Nwasu arrived with their bags. They were moving in. This had not been discussed. Adiz opened her mouth to say something and Chukwu looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Not the warm expression, not the careful, attentive expression she had known for years. Something flat, something done with performance now that the performance had served its purpose. "My parents live here," he said simply. "We did not. This is my house," he said, "and my family lives here." She went quiet. That night they ate dinner. Mrs. Nwasu had cooked. The food was placed on the table, 4 plates. Then 3 plates were set down properly and the 4th, hers, was set with what was left in the pot after everyone had been served. Cold, scraped, less than the others. She looked at the plate. She looked at Chukwu. He was eating, his parents were eating, nobody was looking at her. She ate. When she was done, she washed her plate and went to the bedroom. She lay in the darkness and felt the specific cold feeling of a person who is beginning to understand something they do not yet have words for. Later, much later, when the house was quiet, Chukwu came into the bedroom. She turned to face him. "Chukwu," she said, "what is happening?" He looked at her. "I need to tell you something," he said. She sat up. And then he told her. Not everything, not the whole plan from secondary school, but enough. He told her that her father had been right, that the money mattered to him. He told her that without her family's wealth behind them, their future was going to look exactly like the house they were in. He told her that he was angry at her father for cutting her off because the plan had always depended on the money coming. He told her this in a flat, tired voice, the voice of a man who has been performing for years and is grateful to stop. "You married me for my family's money," she said. "I married you because I thought the money would come," he said. She sat in that bedroom, and the love that she had been carrying for years, that she had run away from her home for, that she had stood in a church against her father's wishes for, that love did not die in that moment. It shifted. It cracked. The cracks spread. She did not cry in front of him. She waited until he was asleep. Then she cried. She cried for hours in the dark in a small house in a neighborhood she did not know, far from the family who had warned her, alone with the specific grief of someone who finally understands that they have been a target, not a love. The pattern established itself within the first week. Every meal she was served last, every meal she received what was left. It was not an accident, it was not carelessness. It was deliberate, a daily, small demonstration of where she stood in the hierarchy of this house. Chukwu's mother ran the kitchen. Mrs. Comfort Nwasu had spent her life in a narrow, resentful world, and now she had a daughter-in-law who had grown up with more than she had ever had and who had failed, in her view, to deliver what she was supposed to deliver. The family money had not come. Dr. Chidi Okafor had cut his daughter off. The plan had not worked. Someone had to pay for that. The leftover food was just the beginning. Adiz was expected to wake before everyone else and clean, to wash everyone's clothing, to manage the housework while holding a job. She had found a nursing administration job at a private clinic nearby, the kind of position her university degree qualified her for, but that paid a fraction of what her family's wealth would have enabled her to do instead. She went to work, she came home, she cooked, she cleaned, she sat at the end of the table and ate what was left. Chukwu, in those first months, had a specific kind of anger that he directed at her. Not always loudly, sometimes just in looks, in silences, in the way he would say something flat and cutting when she expressed an opinion. "Nobody asked you," he said once, when she suggested a small change to the household budget. She closed her mouth. "Your father's money would have made this easier," he said another time, not to her, to the air in the room, "but here we are." She had written to her father once in the second month. A short letter, not asking for anything, just saying that she was well, signing it Adiz. She did not know if he received it. There was no response. What she did not know was that her father received the letter and read it 7 times and gave it to her mother, and they sat together with it without speaking for a long time. Dr. Chidi Okafor had instructed his driver, very quietly with very specific instructions, to periodically drive past Chukwu Street. Not to interfere, not yet. Just to watch. The driver reported back. The Okafor daughter was leaving the house early every morning for work in plain, modest clothes. She was coming home every evening. She did not look well. She was thinner than she had been. Dr. Chidi Okafor listened to these reports with the expression of a man who is waiting for the moment he knows is coming. He told his wife nothing about the driving past the house. She was still too raw with grief to be told. 3 months became 6. 6 months became 9. The leftovers continued every single night. The cleaning continued. The cuts continued. Chukwu's parents became more comfortable in their cruelty as time passed and nothing changed. Mrs. Nwasu began commenting on Adiz's cooking, her cleaning, her manner. Mr. Nwasu sat in the living room every evening and watched television and made observations about the general uselessness of women who had been raised with too much money. "Spoiled," he said once, loud enough for her to hear in the kitchen. "No practical value." She said nothing. She had learned in those months a silence that was not weakness but storage. She was storing everything, every small cruelty, every cold plate, every dismissive word. She was filing it away with the methodical precision of a woman who comes from a family of builders and understands at some level that you do not respond to every obstacle. You wait for the moment to move the whole thing at once. She did not know consciously that she was waiting. But she was. At work, she was different. At the clinic, she was competent and warm, and the patients liked her. Her supervisor had told her twice that she had potential for a management role. She had smiled and thanked him and gone home to the small house and the cold plate. She was 2 people in those months. The person at work who was building something quietly, and the person at home who was waiting for something she could not name. She called her mother once, just once. Her mother picked up immediately. "Mama," she said. Adiz, her mother's voice, was the voice of a woman who had been holding her breath for months. "I am well," Adiz said. Her voice was steady. "I just wanted you to know I am well." A long pause. "Come home," her mother said. "Not yet," she said. "Why?" her mother said. She did not have a complete answer to this question. It was not that she was hoping things would change. She had stopped hoping that. It was something more complicated. The specific paralysis of a person who has made a decision publicly and does not yet know how to stand up from the middle of it. "I am not ready," she said. Her mother was quiet. "Your father asks about you," her mother said, "every day." Adiz closed her eyes. "Tell him I am well," she said. She hung up before her mother could hear her voice break. The night that changed everything arrived, not with drama, but with the specific ordinariness of a regular evening. She had come home from work. She had changed her clothes. She had gone to the kitchen to help with dinner preparation. Mrs. Nwasu had been particularly sharp that day, dismissive, cutting, making small comments about the way Adiz chopped onions, the way she arranged things on the counter, the way she moved in the kitchen. Dinner was ready, the table was set, 3 proper plates, 1 scraped plate with what was left in the pots. She sat at her end of the table. She looked at the food. Chukwu was already eating, his parents were already eating. Nobody looked at her. She looked at the plate. She had been looking at this plate, this version of this plate, every night for 11 months. She picked up her fork. And then something happened. She did not eat. She put the fork down. She stood up. She walked to the kitchen. She picked up her handbag that was on the kitchen counter. She walked back through the living room past the dining table where 3 people were eating and did not look up. She walked to the front door. She opened it. She walked out. She sat on the front step of the house and looked at the dark street and breathed. She heard Chukwu's voice from inside. Where is she going? She heard his mother's voice. She will come back, she has nowhere to go. She sat on the step. She was not going anywhere, not that night, she did not have a plan yet. But she had taken one small step that was not toward the table. And that step mattered. Dr. Chidi Okafor arrived on a Tuesday evening. Not unannounced, in the sense that he had been preparing for this moment for 11 months. He had been building his own case slowly, gathering the picture from his driver's reports, from the one letter, from the one phone call his wife had told him about. He had been patient because patience was what the situation required. But patience has a limit, and the report from his driver the previous week, Adiz looked very thin, she was carrying more bags than usual from the market on foot, had moved something in his chest that told him the moment had arrived. He came alone. He did not bring lawyers, he did not bring police, he did not bring his driver inside. He came to the front door of the small house in the modest neighborhood and he knocked. Mrs. Comfort Nwasu opened the door. She looked at him. She recognized him. She had seen him briefly at the church on the wedding day, and something in her face moved with the specific surprise of a person who has been comfortable in their cruelty, because they assumed the person most able to end it would stay away. "I am here to see my daughter," Dr. Chidi said. His voice was quiet, completely quiet, the voice of a man who does not need volume because the weight in his words does the work. Mrs. Nwasu stepped back from the door. He walked in. The house was exactly as he had imagined from the reports. Small, tired walls, basic furniture, a dinner table still set from the meal, 3 proper plates cleared, 1 plate at the end with food that had not been touched. She had sat down and then not eaten. He stood in the small living room. Chukwu came out of the bedroom. He saw his father-in-law. He stopped. For 1 second, just one, the calculation in his eyes was visible, reassessing, recalibrating. "Sir," he said. Dr. Chidi did not respond to him immediately. He looked past him. Adiz appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. She saw her father. She stood completely still. Dr. Chidi looked at his daughter. He looked at the thin face, the plain clothes, the specific quality of a person who has been living at the wrong end of the table for almost a year. He crossed the room. He put his arms around her. She had been holding everything together for 11 months, every meal, every word, every cold plate, every night. She held for about 3 seconds. Then she let go. She cried the way people cry when they have been holding it for so long that there is no controlling how it comes out. She cried in her father's arms in the small living room of the house she should never have been in. She said sorry. She said it over and over. "Sorry, Papa, sorry, I am so sorry." Her father held her and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "You have nothing to be sorry for." She cried harder. Behind them, Chukwu and his parents watched this from across the room with the specific discomfort of people who are watching something they have caused and cannot stop. When Adiz's crying had settled, not stopped, settled, Dr. Chidi stepped back and looked at her face. He put his hand on her cheek for a moment, then he turned around. He looked at Chukwu. He looked at Mr. and Mrs. Nwasu. He looked at the dinner table with its 4 plates, 3 cleared properly, 1 barely touched at the far end. "I see the table," he said. Nobody spoke. "I see how it is arranged," he said. "I have been told how it has been arranged for 11 months. Chukwu opened his mouth. I am not finished, Dr. Chitty said, the same quiet voice, the voice that did not need volume. Chukwu closed his mouth. You, Dr. Chitty said to Chukwu, sat in my living room and told me about your ambitions. You were well prepared, you had practiced the answers. He paused. You were not prepared for the answer I was giving you, which was, I see you, not the prepared version, the actual version, the version that has been sitting at a table every night and watching my daughter eat cold food. Mr. Nwasu shifted in his chair. You wanted my family's money, Dr. Chitty said. You have always wanted my family's money. You have wanted it since before you introduced yourself to my daughter. And my daughter chose to believe the version of you that she loved, which tells me everything I need to know about her character and everything I already knew about yours. Sir Chukwu started. She came to you, Dr. Chitty said. Against my specific instruction, against my clear word to her, she chose you over her family, and you rewarded that choice with a plate of leftovers every night. The room was completely silent. Tell me something, Dr. Chitty said. Is this how you imagined it? Chukwu said nothing. I imagine it is not, Dr. Chitty said. I imagine you imagine something quite different. I imagine you imagined the money coming. I imagine you imagined a very different life from this one. He looked around the small room. I imagine this house was supposed to be temporary. Something in Chukwu's face confirmed this. It is temporary, Dr. Chitty said, but not in the way you imagined. Adiz, behind her father, was watching her husband's face for the first time with completely clear eyes. The eyes of a woman who has had 11 months to understand something slowly and is now, in this moment, understanding the last part. She wiped her face. She stood up straighter. Papa, she said, her voice was steadier than she expected it to be. He turned to look at her. I want to come home, she said. He looked at her for a moment. You are already there, he said. The confrontation that followed was the specific kind of confrontation that does not need to be loud to be complete. Chukwu tried in the moments after Dr. Chitty's words to shift, to soften, to produce a version of remorse that might change the calculation. He tried to speak with the warmth of the character he had been playing for years. But the character was gone. He had let it go on the wedding night. He had told Adiz the truth, or enough of it, on the wedding night. The mask had come off and it had not gone back on properly since. And now, in this small living room with his father-in-law looking at him with eyes that had seen exactly this before, the attempt to put the mask back was visible for what it was. I made mistakes, Chukwu said. I am willing to. You are willing to what? Dr. Chitty said quietly. Tell me specifically. A pause. To work on things, Chukwu said. Work on things, Dr. Chitty repeated. He said it as though examining the phrase. What things specifically are you willing to work on? Chukwu looked at Adiz. Adiz looked at her husband. In the space between those two looks was the entire truth of their situation. His calculation still running, even now, and her clarity finally arrived after 11 months, after 100 cold plates, after all of it. I am not staying, she said. She said it to him clearly, not as a threat, as a statement. She had not planned to say it. It arrived the way true things arrive, without preparation, completely certain. Chukwu looked at her. Adiz. I am going with my father, she said. She went to the bedroom. She did not pack everything. She packed what mattered: documents, her small, important things, the items she had brought from her parents' home when she had left. She left everything else. She came back to the living room. She picked up her handbag. She looked at the dinner table one more time, the 3 proper plates, the one plate at the end. She looked at it for a long time. Then she turned to her father. Ready, she said. They walked out together. In the car, for the first 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Adiz said, You were right. I know, her father said, not with satisfaction, with the specific sadness of a parent who is never glad to be right about something like this. I should have listened, she said. You loved him, her father said. That is not stupidity, that is being human. She looked out the car window at the city moving past. What do I do now, she said. He was quiet for a moment. Now, he said, you come home and you rest, and after you have rested you decide what comes next. She nodded. After a while she said, I called you on the phone from that house. Mama told me you ask about me every day. Every day, he said. She looked at him. Why did you not come sooner, she said. He thought about this. Because you needed to see it yourself, he said. I could not make you see it, I could only wait until you saw it and chose. He paused. The night you walked out of the house and sat on the front step, my driver saw you, I knew it was time. She stared at him. Your driver was watching the house, she said. For 11 months, he said. She looked at her father for a long moment. This man who had walked into a church to stop a wedding, who had said one final thing and walked away, who had waited and watched from a distance while the truth worked itself out. I love you, Papa, she said. I know, he said. She leaned her head against the window. She was going home. Coming home felt like removing heavy clothes that she had been wearing for 11 months. Not dramatic, not loud, just the specific relief of weight being taken off. The Ackhafer family home was exactly as she had left it. Her room, the kitchen where her mother had cooked every meal she had ever grown up with, the garden where her father walked in the evenings, the soft chairs in the living room where she had done homework for years. Her mother heard the car and was at the front door before they reached it. She did not say anything when she saw Adiz. She just held her. For a very long time. When they finally separated, her mother looked at her daughter's face. The thinness, the tiredness, the specific quality of someone who has been carrying too much for too long, and she took Adiz's face in both hands the way she had done since Adiz was small. You are home, her mother said. I am home, Adiz said. That first week was quiet. Adiz slept more than she had slept in almost a year. She ate proper meals at a table where food was placed in front of her with care. She sat in the garden with her father in the evenings. She talked slowly, carefully about everything, the wedding night, the leftovers, the months of it, the plate at the end of the table. Her father listened to all of it. He did not say, I told you. He did not reference the church or the argument or any of it. He listened the way a man listens when his only purpose is to make sure his child feels heard. Her mother occasionally appeared with food while these conversations were happening. Not to interrupt, just to place things on the table beside them and quietly disappear again. The specific language of a mother who feeds when words are not enough. By the second week, Adiz was beginning to think about what came next. She went back to the clinic. Her supervisor, who had liked her work, welcomed her back. She was given more responsibility. She began to come home from work tired in the good way rather than the defeated way. She was healing. And her father was thinking. Dr. Chidi Ackhafer had been thinking about Chukwu and his family since long before Adiz came home. He was not a man of dramatic revenge. He was a man of architecture, he thought, in structures, in how things were built and how they held up under pressure, in what materials were suited to what purposes. He had thought about what the right response to this situation was. Not punishment for its own sake, not retaliation for the satisfaction of it. He was not built that way. What he wanted was something more precise, something that was not cruelty but that was completely, specifically, poetically just. He had spoken to his company's estate manager 3 weeks before he went to collect Adiz. We have 3 servant positions that have been vacant, the estate manager had confirmed. We have been looking for the right candidates for the grounds maintenance and household support roles. Yes, Dr. Chidi had said, I may have found them. The estate manager had looked at him. Not the usual candidates, sir, he said. No, Dr. Chidi said, not the usual candidates. The letter arrived at Chukwu's house 10 days after Adiz left. It was from Ackhafer Properties and Development, formal letterhead, signed by the estate manager. It offered 3 positions of household staff employment. The positions were for grounds maintenance, kitchen support, and general household work at the Ackhafer family estate. The compensation was modest but regular. The positions included basic accommodation in the staff quarters at the rear of the estate. 3 positions. For Chukwu, Mr. Nwasu and Mrs. Nwasu. The letter was explicit. The positions were being offered as a final courtesy from the Ackhafer family on the condition that the previous rental property lease held in the name of Chukwu Nwasu was vacated. In other words, the small house they were renting was no longer available to them. The landlord, Chukwu would learn on calling, had received a visit from a representative of Ackhafer Properties. The building was now under consideration for development. The current occupants were required to vacate within 30 days. The only alternative housing arrangement being offered was the staff accommodation at the Akafur estate. Chukwu held the letter for a very long time. Then he called his mother. She read the letter. She read it again. "We are not going there as servants," she said. "And where else do we go?" Chukwu said. His voice was flat. She had no answer. The day Chukwu, Mr. Nwasu, and Mrs. Nwasu arrived at the Akafur estate, it was a Wednesday morning. They came with their bags. The estate was everything the small house had not been: high walls, security at the gate, a driveway leading to the main house which was visible in the distance, large, properly maintained, with the quiet authority of a home that has been built with real money and real care. The estate manager received them at the gate. He led them to the staff accommodation at the rear, a clean, functional building separate from the main house. Small rooms, basic furnishings, a shared kitchen for the staff. Their duties were explained. Mr. Nwasu was assigned to the grounds. He would maintain the garden, the driveway, the exterior of the property. Mrs. Nwasu was assigned to kitchen support. She would assist with meal preparation and cleanup for the main household. Chukwu was assigned to general household work, cleaning, errands, the specific list of daily tasks that kept a large household running. He stood in the staff accommodation room and thought about the 30-page plan he had made at 17, the house in the estate he had imagined living in, the car, the name. He was in the estate, just not in the part he had planned to be in. Adiz was in the main house when they arrived. She knew they were coming. Her father had told her quietly 3 days before. "I want you to know," he had said, "because this is your home and what happens in it should not surprise you." She had looked at him. "And I want to know how you feel about it," he said, "if you want me to find another arrangement." "No," she said. He had raised an eyebrow. "It is right," she said. "What they did, it is right that they understand it from the other side." He had looked at her for a moment. "You are very much your mother's daughter," he said. She had smiled for the first time in months. The first meal happened the following evening. The Akafur family ate dinner. Dr. Chitty, Mrs. Ngozi, and Adiz at the large dining table in the main house. The cook prepared the food. Proper portions, warm, served with care. But Adiz had spoken with the cook that morning. The staff had already eaten. They were in the staff kitchen. The meal was prepared and placed on the table. And then the cook, following very specific instructions that had been given carefully and precisely, picked up one plate. She took it to the kitchen. She opened the pots and scraped what was left after the main portions had been set aside. She placed the scraped plate on a small tray. She carried it to the staff kitchen. She set it in front of Chukwu. He looked at the plate. Cold rice, a scraping of stew, less than the others. He looked up. The cook had already turned and walked back to the main kitchen. He sat in the staff kitchen looking at the plate. On the other side of the wall in the main dining room, Dr. Chitty Akafur heard what was happening from his cook and said nothing. He ate his dinner. Adiz ate hers. And if there was something in the quality of the silence in the main dining room that evening, something between a father and his daughter who had been through something together and come out the other side of it, nobody outside that room would have been able to name it. But it was there. The weeks that followed had a specific rhythm. Every evening, the main family ate properly. Every evening, the plate for Chukwu was last and scraped. Every evening, the specific arrangement that had defined Adiz's 11 months was replicated in reverse. Mrs. Nwasu washed dishes after every meal. She scrubbed the pots she had once commanded. She cleaned surfaces in a kitchen that was bigger and better equipped than any kitchen she had ever managed. Mr. Nwasu maintained the garden. He learned which plants Dr. Chitty's wife particularly valued and was given specific instruction to care for them with precision. Chukwu cleaned every morning, every evening, the floors he had imagined walking on as an owner, the driveway he had imagined pulling his car up to, the windows of the house he had imagined living in. He cleaned them with his hands, on a staff salary. One afternoon, about 3 weeks in, Adiz was in the garden reading when Chukwu was working nearby, trimming a hedge. She did not look up. He looked at her. "Adiz," he said. She turned a page. "I am sorry," he said. She looked up then. She looked at him for a long moment, the face she had loved, the face she had run away from her family for, the face that had told her on the wedding night what he had always been. She looked at him. "I know," she said. She went back to her book. He turned back to the hedge. That was all. It was enough. Some things do not require a big ending. Some things require only the specific, quiet acknowledgement that the arc has completed, that the person who handed out the cold plates has held one in their own hands, that the person who sat at the wrong end of the table has finally eaten properly. That what was done in the dark has been brought to the light. Not with noise. Just with a plate at the end of a table. So, that is Adiz and Chukwu. That is what a cold plate every night for 11 months led to. But I want to stay with you for one more moment, because this story is not just about a man getting what he deserved. It is not just about a woman coming home. It is not even just about a father who was right. This story is about something that happens in a lot of people's lives and is very hard to talk about. It is about the love you give to someone who was never going to give it back. Adiz did not fall in love with a lie, she fell in love with a performance of truth, and that is not her failure, that is his crime. Because here is what Chukwu took from her that was worth more than any property. He took years. Years of genuine love, given freely, to someone who cataloged every word she said and used it against her. Years of trust placed in someone who was measuring the walls of her father's house while he held her hand. Years of her standing in a church against her father's clear warning because she believed in the person she thought she knew. He did not just take her money, the money that never came. He took her years of love and used them as the price of entry to a family he never intended to honor. And she paid that price willingly. That is the most painful part of the story. She paid it willingly and generously and with her whole heart. Loving the wrong person is not stupidity. Please understand this. Loving the wrong person is what happens when a genuinely good person is targeted by someone who knows how to look like the right person. Adiz was warm and trusting and generous. These are not weaknesses. These are gifts. She had been raised by parents who measured people by who they were, who valued honesty and substance over performance, and those values made her exactly the kind of person that a patient, calculated predator would target. Because genuine people are easier to deceive than cynical people. Because people who love fully are more vulnerable than people who love partially. This is not a reason to become cynical. It is a reason to know what the red flags look like so that when they appear, you can receive them even from the people you love. The red flag was there. It was her father. Dr. Chidi Okafor looked at Chukwu Nwasu in his living room and saw what his daughter could not see because she was too close and too in love to have perspective. He said, "He does not look at you with love, he looks at you like something to acquire," and he said it clearly. He said it with sadness, he said it without anger. And she did not receive it. Not because she was a fool, because she was in love, and love at full strength is not good at receiving information that contradicts it. The lesson here is not, do not trust love. The lesson is, when the person who loves you most, who has no agenda, who has protected you your entire life, looks at the person you are choosing and says, "I see something wrong," do not stop loving. But do slow down, do listen, do look at what they are actually saying rather than what you are afraid they are saying. Her father was not saying you cannot love this person, he was saying this person does not love you. Those are different sentences. One is about your feeling, the other is about their character. She could not hear the second sentence because she was too focused on the first. And then there is Dr. Chidi, who went to a church and said come home and was told no. Who cut her off not with cruelty but with the specific sadness of a father who cannot protect his child from her own choices and will not pretend otherwise. Who sent his driver past the house for 11 months. Who arrived on a Tuesday evening without lawyers, without noise, without performance. Who put his arms around his daughter in a small living room and said you have nothing to be sorry for. That father. He did not say I told you, he never said it, not once, not at the church, not in the car, not in the weeks after she came home. Because I told you is what you say when you want the other person to feel bad about what they did to themselves. And he did not want his daughter to feel bad. He wanted his daughter to feel safe. He wanted her to know that the door back had never been locked. The door was always open. That is the real love in this story. not the performed love that Chukwu manufactured over years. The real love, the steady, patient, non-dramatic love of a father who drove past a house for 11 months and waited. That is love. That is what it looks like when it is real. One more thing. The leftovers. For 11 months she sat at the end of the table and ate what was left, cold, scraped, less than everyone else. And then one evening, in the staff kitchen of the Okafor estate, Chukwu sat down at his own plate and looked at cold rice and scraped stew and understood, not from a lecture, not from a speech, not from anything that could be argued with or denied, understood from a plate exactly what he had done every night for 11 months. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. The specific, wordless clarity of experiencing what you chose to inflict. Not revenge, not punishment. Just the thing you gave returned. The mirror held up. The plate placed in front of you. If this story stayed with you, if you felt that fire in your chest, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Fair Folktales and ring the notification bell. Every single week we have a story like this one. A story about someone who was targeted. A story about someone who came home. A story about the specific, satisfying justice of a plate placed at the end of the table. Share this video with someone who needs it. You know who that person is. The one who is sitting at the wrong end of the table right now and does not know it. Send this to them. Let them know that Fair Folktales sees them. Comment below, tell us, was there ever someone in your life who saw the truth before you did? Someone who warned you and you did not listen? What happened when you finally understood they were right? We read every single comment, every one. This is Fair Folktales. The greedy always fall, the overlooked always rise, and the ones who hand out cold plates, they always end up holding one. We will see you in the next story.